Okay, going to do trinomial factoring. And like I said before, I don't really split up trinomial factoring at all, so I'll be doing, you know, what we learned as trinomial easies and trinomial difficults. I'll do them both kind of together, and then when it comes to the assignments, you'll be able to decipher which one's which. So let's start off with an example here of a trinomial that can be factored. Let's go x squared plus 5x plus, let's go with 6. Okay, so this is a trinomial. You can tell it's a trinomial because of the three terms, right? Trinomial is obviously three terms, and there's your three terms, just like so. Not that we have to be concerned about this. At this point, we can kind of remember tri is 3. Now, what makes this a trinomial easy, if you remember from grade 9, is that the number in front here of the x squared term is actually a 1. So the number right there is a 1x squared, even though we don't worry about it too much. Both types of trinomials, I'm going to do a product and a sum, and I always call it doing the magic square. I say what times what gives me, that'll add to give me. So now where do I get these numbers from? Well, when you multiply, you get your product from a times c. So here's a, even though it's a 1, times 6. So here, let me erase that a, and I'll put the letters up where they belong. Whoops. So we'll erase that maybe. Okay, so A, B, C. There's your letters. So A times C, we got 1 times 6 is 6. And then B is what you got to add to. So you figure out this, and this is the hardest part of all trinomials. So what two numbers work? Well, it should be 2 times 3 or 3 times 2, whichever you prefer. Okay, and we circle this. That's what I call the splitter. Alright, now we're going to see, remember with the trinomial easy from grade 9, that we don't really have to do much work, but on this first one I'm going to do some work. I'm going to use the splitter exactly as it is and split up that 5x and replace it with a 2x and a 3x, okay? And normally I don't do that, but we will this time. So x squared plus 2x plus 3x plus 6. So you can see I replaced the 5x, or split it up, with a 2x and a 3x. Now, go back to your GCF thoughts, and remember that we can factor by grouping a little bit. If I put in these fake brackets like so, now we can GCF each bracket, exactly like the GCF assignment. Well, what can I divide out of this x squared and 2x, or factor out of it? Well, the greatest common factor is an x, and in those brackets I'd be left with an x plus 2. And now I can look at the 3x plus 6. What can I factor out of that bracket? Well, it looks like a positive 3, because the leading term is positive, and I'd be left over with an x plus 2 as well. Now, like in the GCF assignment, and I said that the reason we have to learn how to factor by grouping is because we have to use it for trinomials. So out of both those terms, I can take an x plus 2 out and write down what's left over. When I divide the x plus 2 out of the first term, I'm left with an x, and when I divide it out of the second one, I'm left with a plus 3. There's your final factored answer. Okay, so remember earlier I said trinomial easy, we don't have to do much work. Look at the numbers here, the 2 and the 3, and then look at the numbers here, how that works out. So it seems like there's something going on here, if you can remember back to grade 9. Now, let's try another one. Well, let's see. Let's put a number as a now. Let's go with negative 4x squared plus 1, and let's go with minus 3x. I just think about that for a second. Yeah, that should work. So, if we're going to factor this, notice now that a is a negative 4, b is a negative 3, and c is a 1. So I still do the magic square. What times what gives me a negative 4, a times c, right? A times c. And add to give me a negative 3, or b. Okay? So I think the answer is going to be negative 4 and 1. Negative 4 and 1. So either way, 1, negative 4, or negative 4, 1. I always circle my splitter. Always, always, always. Because that way I don't confuse it with replacing the middle term with the actual product and sum. Just replace it with the numbers we found. So again, I'm going to use my splitter. Split up the negative 3x with negative 4x squared minus 4x from our magic square right here plus 1x, okay, plus 1x from our magic square right there plus 1. And again, I'm going to put some brackets here so I can factor by grouping. Now, a GCF each of those brackets until I got something I can take out of the whole thing. So if I divide out a negative 4x out of the first set of brackets, and I take out the negative because the leading sign is negative. Just like over here, it's a positive, so whatever I take out of that bracket is going to be a positive. So I take out negative 4x out of the first bracket. When I divide a negative 4x squared by negative 4x, what's left is an x. And if I divide negative 4x by negative 4x, I'm left with plus 1. Now, out of the second set of brackets right here, the only thing I can take out is a 1. It doesn't change anything, so but I'll take it out. I'll take out a plus 1. And like I said, it doesn't change anything. X plus 1. But you can see now we've got a common x plus 1. So if I take out x plus 1 out of both and write down what's left over when I divide that out of both terms, I can see that it's a negative 4x and a plus 1. Okay, so there's your factored form. Now, this is different than the last one because we had a number other than positive 1 as a right there. So we couldn't just take our splitter numbers and put them in. It doesn't work quite that way. So, what we can keep in mind here when we do this is if it's a positive 1, sometimes people call them trinomial easies for letter A, and if it's not, it's a trinomial difficult. So if A equals positive 1, trinomial easy. Not because it's easier, just more so because it takes less work. That's about it. So if it's any other number, you gotta use your splitter. Trinomial easy if other than 1, you must split up B term. Okay, you got it. So let's go with another one here. Example, let's try x squared minus 7x plus 12. So A is a 1, B is a negative 7, and C is a 12. So when I do my magic square, I say A times C, so 1 times 12 is 12. B is negative 7. I figure out those numbers, negative 4, negative 3, negative 4, negative 3. Now, because I recognize it's a trinomial easy, I can take the shortcut and just place those terms in the bracket. You don't have to. You can split up the middle term and factor it by grouping, the whole works. But I'm just going to do it like this time. I'm going to set up the two factors. I know we're talking about x's in this one. And I'm going to put in my splitter terms, negative 4 and negative 3. I know for a fact that's my answer. So I put in the negative 4 and the negative 3 from here. For a trinomial easy, you're done. It's finished like that. All right. For a trinomial difficult now, we'll do it another time, and then I'll put on maybe one of the harder ones that you guys will see. So let's do another trinomial difficult here real quick. 2x squared plus 5x plus 2. This is one. Well, I do my magic square again. What times what? Gives me a 4. Adds to give me a 5. It's 4 and 1. 4 and 1. Doesn't matter which order again. I gotta emphasize that. But I circle my splitter regardless. Now I notice it's a trinomial difficult because a is a number other than 1. So I gotta put my splitter in. I have to replace this with the 4 and the 1. So 2x squared plus 4x plus a 1x. Yeah, I guess you don't need the 1 there, but plus 2. And I have to put in the brackets like so. Alright. GCF each bracket. 2x. I'm left with x plus 2. I GCF a 1 out of here because there's nothing that comes out of a x plus 2, but a 1 doesn't really change anything. Okay, so I've got my x plus 2 that I can take out, x plus 2, and I'm left over with a 2x and a plus 1. So now you can see that these splitters can't be used as in a trinomial difficult. It doesn't work, okay? So I'll do one last example for you, and then you guys can try the assignments. So this is probably the hardest type you'll get to see. Let's try this one here. I'll do a trinomial easy because it doesn't matter on this type if it's a trinomial easy or difficult, because if you notice what I'm going to show you here, I want you to always do it as if it's a trinomial difficult. So x squared, let's go minus 13x, let's go plus 12. But now, let's put a y beside the x and a y squared beside the 12, just like so. So now you notice there's two variables. If you notice two variables, I want you to always treat this as if it's a trinomial difficult. I know this is a trinomial easy because of a is a 1. There's b, there's c still. So it is a trinomial easy, but don't do it like that. Just do a little bit extra to make yourself correct all the time. So a times c is 12. B is negative 13, so when I figure this out, I get negative 12 and negative 1. And the only way you'll get that stuff is trial and error. This will become a little bit easier. Hopefully you do remember a little bit of this from grade 9. So now when I put this in, remember I'm treating this question like a trinomial difficult. I'm going to split up that negative 13xy with negative 12xy plus a negative 1xy, again from the splitter, negative 1, plus 12y squared. And I'll put in my brackets. You'll notice that the positive is always in between the brackets, no matter if it's a positive or negative. You got to have that sign there. Alright. Now if I can GCF out of these brackets, that first set of brackets, I see I can take an x out of both things. So when I divide an x out, I get x minus 12y. That one's taken care of. Out of the second set of brackets, I have to divide out a negative y, and negative again because the leading term is negative. Don't forget that one. So I have to take a negative y out. That changes things. Now when I divide by a negative y, it makes it a positive x minus 12y. Because if I divide by a negative, it turns that positive into a negative. And of course, it should always work out for you, if you do it right, that these brackets are the same for a trinomial difficult. So x minus 12y, and you're left over with x minus y. And you can always multiply it back out to see if you got it correct. So hopefully you can see, or hopefully it's more review than anything for this trinomial stuff. Okay, and remember, you can always do it as if it's a trinomial difficult. rather than an easy. But if you understand that, enjoy.